All right, thank you, Chris. All right, so just to introduce myself, I'm Angel Valentin. I am from Puerto Rico originally. I came here for college and I graduated Purdue in 2018 in mechanical engineering. As you can imagine by my being here, I also have other interests. So I interned in Congress during my time in college and I worked there through the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute. And after that, I worked for Sherry Shipley's state Senate campaign here in Tippecanoe County during the 2018 election cycle. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the roles of campaigns here and how you can be involved in them. So I basically divided it into three categories. Obviously, there is some overlap between the different areas. One of them is the full-time staffer. You see those in state legislative races, statewide races, and federal races. And that is a very time-consuming job, obviously. But there's also super volunteers, I like to call them. Most campaigns call them that. And super volunteers, basically, they help organize successful local grassroots campaign. And really, those are the people that help us win at the local level. We have a lot of, in the last cycle, we had a lot of people that joined us and kind of became like super volunteers for different campaigns. And really, they were the engine that drove the success of for local candidates in our last election cycle. So we're really grateful for that. So, and the last role is the volunteers. And they really, at the end of the day, are the engine that drives the campaign. Between the candidate, the staffer, and super volunteers, you can only reach so many people. So our goal is to get as many people involved as volunteers as we can. So what do full-time staffers and super volunteers do? I basically divided it into three main areas. One of them is canvassing and voter outreach, which is really important. It's the everyday work of the campaign. I won't be focusing as much on that because as you probably have all done a little bit of canvassing, and then also volunteer recruitment and organizing, which is at the end of the day one of the hardest parts of the campaign, but it is the part that guarantees that your campaign can win. And the last one is managing the candidate. Be it in a full-time staffer or like a close volunteer to a candidate role, you are going to have to help the candidate because they only have so much time on their hand, and campaigns are pretty big stuff. Even local campaigns take up a lot of time, and it's really hard to organize and keep the candidate on task. So, the most important part of the job, you may have heard this before, is that your aim is to organize yourself out of a job. The idea is you start canvassing, right, at first, and you're reaching out to voters and trying to get people to show up, but in the end, you really want other people to do that work so that you can recruit more and more volunteers and get the message out to as many people as possible. So that's kind of what we do. Before I go further, though, I just want to make sure that I can add comments to particular areas to match areas of your interest. So if some of you might want to ask or something that you want me to go a little bit into more detail, now would be a good time so that I can put a little bit of emphasis on that area as well. So we can take a minute or two to do that. Is there any particular area that you're interested in? Mm-hmm. I'll make sure to do a little bit more of that. Mm-hmm. So. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I've been out of this for a long time. I live in a very small town in County,
Mm-hmm.
and so I guess how to approach canvassing when you already know where people stand and that you can't change their minds, and how to strategically choose, I guess, who to
Mm-hmm.
canvass.
Okay.
Could you please repeat the question?
Oh, the question was, so he was interested in seeing a little bit more about canvassing and how he could get involved. And I don't know your name, sorry? Sorry? Kat was asking about how you could actually help and be organizing and doing canvassing and reaching out to voters in smaller towns, especially because she's worried about the political views that they might be ingrained in the community and whatnot, which are actually really important parts of what we do during canvassing. So I'll try to focus on those parts when we come to it. Oh.
Just ask a stupid question. Is canvassing for a particular candidate or to vote?
So canvassing is for a particular candidate. So what we go, or candidates, what we go out is do, we go talk to voters. Obviously, it doesn't have to be just candidates. The Greater Lafayette Indivisible has been doing the Working Hoosiers campaign where they're going out and talking about issues, which is a really important part about how we actually get people involved in the process. So, yeah. All right. Any other areas that you guys would like me to focus?
Well, I've done a lot of telephone calling in the past, but increasingly I'm just talking to answering machines.
Yeah.
And I've recently been reading about this movement of you get a handful of postcards and you fill them out and mail them. Any thoughts on how effective the postcards are? Is that a good use of your time?
I think that it depends on the campaign. There have been campaigns that do it very effectively. I think that you still want to focus on canvassing the most, but like anything that you do will get you something. And especially if you don't have the resources to do phone banking or phone banking is not being successful, if you want to be able to reach people, then that's an alternative. So, yeah. All right, so I'm gonna start here. So I'm gonna start with the hardest part of this all, and it's on the bigger role. Obviously, not every person that volunteers or works with a campaign is going to do every bit of the roles that I'm gonna be talking about, but I'm gonna start with managing the candidate. That seems a little bit of a strange thing, but one of the hardest parts about it is keeping the candidate on message. I think that all of us here are very involved in the process and care a lot about what the issues that are going on. And there's constantly issues that are coming our way. And both the candidates and us, we like to be able to interject about every little thing that comes up, but we really have to make sure that we are getting our message across. And if we can't hammer a message and be able to talk to voters about that particular issue, then we're not going to be able to successfully get ourselves into the conversation because we're not going to be able to make a dent. We don't have a big cohesive message about what we're doing. So that's a really important part about what working in a campaign is like. Another part is helping organize their schedule because obviously candidates, especially for local office, they already work. They have a full-time job most of the time. And then you have the campaign time, which is a lot of work. And then last but not least, this is my personal input, candidates are still humans. I know that a lot of the times we'd like to think, why aren't they here? Why aren't they doing this? Why aren't they doing that? But candidates also need times to be themselves. And I think that that's an important part. So when managing the candidate, that is an advice that I would give to basically anybody. And the last bit, the last two bits, fundraising. This is a harder part for a lot of people, so you want to help them fundraise, and that can include you reaching out to people and being organizing fundraisers, reaching out to your friends, trying to get the message out, trying to get them to support the candidate. I know that's the less savory part of campaigning, but it's necessary because we need some amount of money to be able to get our message out. We need campaign literature in particular, the infamous yard signs, which help us at least psychologically feel like we're making an impact. So, and then the last bit is voter outreach, which is at the end of the day, how we reach the most voters and are actually able to get voters to turn out for us and to support our candidates. So, here we go. For the next one, so just an idea for keeping candidate on message. You want to get like a list of issues that you're working on or that you care about. Make a list, and then you can put everything that's important to you on there, and basically start grouping them into clusters. So let's say that you have cost of education, quality of education, teacher pay. All of those things feed into the education topic. And that's what you get, an overarching message about what you're trying to focus on. So there's that. There can be, especially right now for local elections, an important one is criminal justice reform, especially as some people in the county want to expand the jail to have more space. So I know that that's a really important issue. And then the last one is creating the stump speech, which is a condensed short message that highlights the priorities that you defined above. And you want to stick to those issues, especially in most circumstances. There's a lot of things that will happen, and we can't comment on all of them. Obviously, there are situations that call for us shifting away from our message for a day or two, especially, unfortunately, when tragedies happen. And I know that that has, unfortunately, been the case fairly often in the last few years. So that's something to keep in mind. But. All right. So organizing a schedule for candidates and for the people involved in the campaign, you want to be able to balance actually the time that you spend participating in the events and the times that you spend canvassing. We like to go and reach out to groups, and that is a very important part of what we do. But endorsements, although we kind of thrive and look forward to them, they're just badges of honor a lot of the time in local campaigns, because really it's about winning with the grassroots. And you go to these events and you try to find people that are like-minded and you try to get them to volunteer. You don't care as much about their endorsement in a certain sense, because we're trying to campaign for everybody. We're not trying to campaign for the support of one group or another. And I mean, you see it in local elections and national elections, how many people come up from the grassroots, have very few support from groups, and make a dent and win an election because they have the support of the people. So I want us to be able to focus on that, which is a really important part. And then voter outreach, which is the most important part for both the candidate and volunteers, which is really what drives the election. So going to the topic, I know later on we'll cover a little bit more as well, but canvassing really is about going out and targeting people that we think are convincible. And that's a little bit hard sometimes, but we do have some resources. Progressive organizations use VAN. It's one of the most common used tools. It was developed in the Obama campaign, and it's been in use for a little bit. The Sanders campaign also has its own voter outreach tool that seeks to target voters as well. And that gets to the heart of what Kat was talking about as well. That helps us be able to reach out to people. The last bit is, well, you're also tracking their canvassing progress. You want to be able to spend 8 to 10 hours a week for the candidate, not volunteers, canvassing out in the community, because the candidate is the best advocate for themselves. And then after that, the best advocates are you guys, the people that are close to the candidate, that know the issues that they're passionate about, that can speak to their values, their convictions, and why they care about these issues. So you want to stay canvassing that way, mostly because you can get a large number of doors, which is really another way of saying you can reach out to as many people as possible. So I did a quick estimate, and if you did this for a 9-month campaign, the candidate would be able to themselves knock on 4,700 doors, which is a pretty big number of doors and a pretty sizable size of the electorate that we're actually trying to reach to. And then the last bit is scheduling time to raise funds. Unfortunately, funds are necessary, so we want to keep track of who they're calling, as well as help them reach out to people outside of their network. And actually, that's a big part of where you guys come in, because if you're helping a candidate, you'll have people that care about the same issues you do. And you'll be able to talk to them about why the candidate is doing a good job, why they're important to the community, why the change that they're seeking to advocate is actually going to be helpful, and how it's going to be able to positively impact the community. And that's a really big part about gaining support, because no candidate can do it by themselves. And it really is about actually building a movement around the candidate and the campaigns and the issues, and we have to be able to be laser focused a little bit on that. And voter outreach, I'm gonna focus on that a little bit. Here's what you guys were focusing on. Voter outreach. One way to do it is through canvassing. We usually do like 2 hours of canvassing each sessions, or 2 or 3 hours. And what we do is we go out and talk to voters. We make lists of people that we think are convincible. But one of the things that's really important is that you have to stay issue oriented, because a lot of the time, speaking to what you were saying, we're trying to reach people that have fairly strongly held beliefs about parties, about what people stand for. But a lot of the time, what we don't realize or what we lose in that is that a lot of the people actually are with us on the issues, and we have to be able to talk about why the issues are important. We need to be able to convey to them, this is what my candidate stands for, and get beyond the party label in a certain sense. Parties are important for a lot of things in organizing and whatnot, but they're not as important to the voter. And we need to be able to talk about the issues because that's how we win. I mean, in the last election cycle, we focused a lot on actually going to rural communities, which was a little bit scary at first because you're expecting what you said. You know, you have people that have very deeply held beliefs and you think that they're going to stick to what they're believing in and it's not going to change. But that's not true. A lot of the people are open to hearing what different people have to say. And a lot of the time they agree with you and they actually are able to like engage with you and start seeing that this candidate can maybe do something that I really care about. So that's my advice when it comes to canvassing in a little bit more rural areas. That's really important.
Well, and there may be some things that are more local issues, like the jail expansion, that most people agree, we don't want to pay for more jail space, especially when our incarceration rates are so high already.
Yeah. So it's really about reaching them. I think in general, like we have the winning issues. We have the issues and the facts on our side, and people are actually able to see that. One important part is not letting it daunt you out of actually going out and doing voter outreach because you think that people have certain deeply held beliefs. I think that that's actually a really important part about going out and campaigning. Sometimes it's not about winning this election today. It's about building the infrastructure, getting to the community, starting conversations. Because every work you put it into this campaign is work that the next people that run are going to be able to tap into. And if you've already built a base about what you're talking about, what issues are important, volunteer networks in the community, then that work helps drive a future campaign to be able to be even more successful than you guys were. So that's a really important part about what going out and campaigning is. And so I like to think that a super volunteer would go out and canvass 4 to 10 hours a week. I know that's challenging, but in that time you're able to reach quite a bit of people. And as I said, you're some of the best advocates for the different candidates because you're really passionate about the issues and you know the candidates and you know what's important to them. So. Then the last bit is making phone calls on day when the weather isn't great. I know I put it there purposely because I know I hated doing that when I was working the campaign. As you said, response rates have gone down. There's a lot of spam callers. People just don't pick up their phone. But when you don't have an option, right, you still want to focus on reaching as many voters as you can. So talking about making phone calls, writing postcards. Writing postcards is also really important in communities where you can't reach everybody. You're able to like get a tidbit, like kind of talk to the neighbors. I know that we've been working on the local level about doing volunteers that reach out to the people in their community. And that was really successful last election cycle as well. And we can do that through canvassing your local community, sending out postcards, having conversations one-on-one with people. That's a really important part about how we actually go out and turn out voters. It's the bread and butter of campaigns, really. And volunteer recruitment. It's one of the most important parts. As I said at the beginning, it's kind of what allows us to run successful campaigns. So tapping into existing campaign networks. That's what I was telling Kat and you guys. We want to be able to tap into the networks that have already been established. One of the things that we were facing in 2018 was that locally, it'd been quite a while since we'd had a lot of candidates being involved, having, active campaigns, and we were struggling because we didn't have the built-in networks. We didn't have the connections because a lot of the people that we got out to canvass in the end, they said that the last time they'd gone out and done something was when Obama was running in 2008. And over the course of 10 years, then you lose a lot of those connections. You kind of grow distant from the people, and the new people that come in to run don't know where those networks are. So it's really hard work, but it's really important, and it allows us to be successful now and in the future. I know that for whoever's running this cycle, they're going to have a much better time of actually being able to get volunteers because of the work that campaign organizers and candidates put in 2018. So I think that's a really good sign, and it's something that gives us hope and about where we're going to be in the next few years. So you're also going to want to reach out to your friend network. The people that you know are some of the most important people that you can go out and get to canvas. First, they're accountable to you, because the people that you don't know, they can just blow you off and tell you, no, I can't show up, and you can't really do that much about it. But your friends are going to want to come out because they made a commitment to you. So that's a really important part about actually getting people to go out and canvas and volunteer for campaigns and work and help get people elected. And it really is an important part. I mean, you'll see later, let me see if I had this previous photo. Yeah, over here in this photo, I have two of the people that are in college Democrats, that were in college Democrats, and then we happened to be canvassing and we ran into another former member of college Democrats as well. So those people that were out canvassing with me fairly often, and one of the biggest reasons why was because I had a personal connection with them. And that's what, at the end of the day, campaigning is about. You're going to have and build personal connections with people, because that's how we actually get people to become invested in our campaigns, to care about the issues, to care about making sure that our candidates got elected. So big shout out to them. I couldn't have done it without them. And then the other bit that's really important is community organizations. You have seen here, we have a lot of community organizations that are here today. And that's a really important part about how we actually go out and get volunteers, because there are people that are already tapped in their communities to different issues. Be it in the case of Surge, standing up for racial justice. Racial justice is really important to them. You have people like the Citizens Climate Lobby, and they're really caring about climate change and trying to stop it, and renewable energy and all of these issues and focuses. And where we're going to these groups and talking about why our message matches what they're talking about, that's where you actually get to build connections, get people to show up and volunteer for you. So that's a really important part. So don't stop being connected with groups in your community, and try to build lasting connections with them. It's sometimes hard to get volunteers, but out of those groups, you get the people that are most passionate about the issues, that really care about seeing change happen in their local communities at the state level, federal level. So try to tap into those groups. Get your message out if you're running for yourself, if you're volunteering for the candidate you're helping out, and those people are very likely to support you, be it through fundraising, be it through canvassing, or getting the word out themselves. And then there's the hard way. The hard way of getting volunteers is still very important. You're going to be going canvassing, and you're going to get people that support you. And those people that support you are going to, they're the people that you have to ask them and be like, do you want to be involved? And that's a really hard part of the process, but it's a really important one, because we're not trying to just get people to turn out to vote. We're trying to build a grassroots movements about how we actually get it done. So I really want to emphasize that, and that sometimes involves cold calling. Cold calling, especially people that have been involved in past campaigns. Thankfully, as I said, we've been building a stronger network of people, so we got some place to start. So that's basically what I have here. Other than an election day, you make it to election day after doing all of this for a few months, and it's nerve-wracking. There are mixed results, but the work that you put in is going to be able to help future campaigns and the people that run after you worked to be able to be more successful, to be able to work on the issues for their community. And there's always a future campaign. And the last bit, because I think that it's an important shameless plug. Here's a transition from volunteer to candidate. This is my friend James. He was part of College Democrats, so John knows him pretty well. And last year he was really involved, and he helped us canvass basically once a week at the very least, usually 3 or 4 times a week. And this last cycle in 2019, he ran for West Lafayette City Council and got elected. Yeah, exactly. So he wasn't able to be here today because he's working, but I just wanted to throw that shameless plug because it's important. The people that are here in this room today are the leaders in our community, and we need to be able, some of you might run, some of you might not, but we need your presence and activity, be it working through the campaign or actually running for office and trying to establish positive change in your community. So we only have a few minutes, but I can take a few questions before we end. 2-3 minutes.
This isn't really a question. Election day doesn't stop. Election day in 2016, I had to do a whole bunch of phone calling, thanking for Hillary Clinton. In 2018, I was doing canvassing out there. Bill Donnelly.
Yeah. Yeah. On election day, as he's saying, election day doesn't stop. On election day, we actually do a ton of stuff. We do get out the vote. We go do phone calls. It's a really hectic day. If you haven't been in one of the local, and at least I worked for the Democratic Party here when I did it, and if you haven't been in one of their stations where they're doing phone calls, you don't know what hectic means. But it's a really important part because we want to get every last voter out, and there's still people making their decisions. And it can be a little bit hectic, but after the polls close, we have all the time in the world to look at the results and all of that stuff, and then start preparing for the next election cycle, because it never ends. Any questions or comments? First step to join? So, first step to join, I would say, is basically one way. There's multiple ways to get in. You can reach out to local, in our case, right, the local Democratic Party is really invested, and they can give you a list of the people that are reaching out to, candidates that are in the community. You can look them up, reach out to them. You can sit down. They're willing to sit down and have coffee with you, talk about what their issues are, why they're running, and they'll be able to tell you what they need out of their campaign, because each campaign is different. And I know. Oh yes, usually we send out people. We divide an area and we send like 2 or 3 people to a neighborhood. We divide the houses and we go out. We give them a script which is issue focused about what the candidate stands for, and you're able to have conversations with the voters. The first time can be a little bit daunting, but after that it gets easier. So.
And usually, so like last time around, you would go to certain locations and they'd give you a list of where to go,
Mm-hmm.
and then a script, and you can even practice the script.
Mm-hmm.
You can role play, and then you go out and then you take notes about what you encountered and bring that script, that your list back.
Mm-hmm.
Go home.
Yep. I forget your name. Sorry, Susan. I'm sorry. As Susan says, we do that all the time. We have scripts. We give you that. We give you the literature, and we go out and are able to talk with you. John, you had something?
So you can just contact the Democratic Party,
Mm-hmm.
Democratic Party headquarters, and say that you're interested in helping with canvassing. I'd be interested in how you can yard signs, literature drops, whatever it is that you're willing to do, and sign up for the newsletter, and they'll send you information about when these things are happening.
Yeah.
And the party should be getting somebody to be in the headquarters
Soon. Yeah.
because people are starting to get charged up.
Yeah.
And want to be able to contact.
So yeah, I hope that this gives you an idea of what working in a campaign is like, be it like as a volunteer, staffer, or a super volunteer. And I hope that you guys will be involved in this next election cycle. I wanted to give a quick shout out to Susan, seeing as she is going to be running for county council soon. So she is one of the candidates that you can help out on this election cycle. So please reach out to the party, to candidates, and try to get involved. That's really the way we win. It's when people like you are invested in the process, they show up, and are actually able to go and reach out to voters, because I think we have the winning issues on our side. We just have to let people know about them and about us and what we stand for. So thank you for being here. I really appreciate it.